Another Shut the Front Door episode starts with me keeping myself and yourself and ourselves honest. This week, I'm going to talk about something very important. It's not stats, it's not supply, it's not the things you can control. It is the pity party. Now, the pity party is one you don't want to be invited to or inviting other people to. So I'm going to give you some very practical tips and also an overview of what's involved in a pity party and also how to deal with it and avoid it. So let's acknowledge the elephant in the room, the obvious thing. The market is challenging. God, it's really difficult at times. There are people out there who feel despondent, disillusioned, heartbroken, and they've lost all faith in their property journey and also the opportunity of being a homeowner. But the reality is we are where we are right now. And no amount of government policy, changes, money flowing in, out, builders starting to build perfectly tomorrow is going to change that in the short term. So let's deal with what we can and do what we can. So first and foremost, when it comes to the pity party, we're going to address the first of our four topics, which is emotional fatigue. A big part emotional fatigue plays in this pity party element is building your resilience, dealing with the challenges of the search, what you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, how you spend your time. And sometimes people go into it enthusiastic, but sometimes a little bit blind to the fact that it is a challenge. When you start a job, when you take on a new project, when you learn a new language, at first it's going to be challenging. You're doing something new, you're doing something unknown, and you're trying to do the best you can to adapt to it. And emotional fatigue is something where you need to be very mindful of what it is you're thinking. What's your mindset? How are you going to approach setbacks? How are you going to invest your time and that of your loved ones or your family and friends if you're going to involve them in the search with you as well? And emotional fatigue is something where you need to take a sense check, much like taking your pulse. Pushing it too far too fast isn't going to help you either. You don't get any medals for stressing yourself out. So emotional fatigue is something you need to be very mindful of. Secondly, this is a big one in Ireland. The Joneses, comparison culture. Your time is limited, so is theirs. And then you hear that they were successful in getting a property. They beat someone else in their say it agreed cycle, in their search, in their negotiation, whatever it may be. They got the property that you may be alluding to wanting, or maybe you were watching it from afar wondering, what if? Comparison is literally the thief of joy because they got what they were going after. It doesn't make you any less successful. It doesn't give you any less potential to find the property that you want. But this comparison element is going to literally drain the life out of you slowly but surely. Because the reality is, I liken it to a wedding. If I'm paying for my wedding, I want to bring the people I want to bring. I want to do it the way I want to do it. What if I want a clown? What if I want a crazy, frozen style cake with Elsa and Anna on top? It doesn't actually matter. But as soon as someone else is paying for my wedding and they start getting involved in what I'm doing, that's when comparison starts coming in. I'm kind of saying, well, why am I doing it and they're not? Why are they allowed to do X, Y, Z? Or you have a particular event or an occasion that matters to you. Someone else does their version of that and you don't understand their motivations. You don't understand their means, whatever it may be. And you find yourself looking at them and thinking what they have makes your experience less. It's ridiculous. So I'm here to tell you that you need to stop and you need to remember that comparison is literally going to drain every enjoyment out of anything you ever do. You're looking at a property, someone else gets it or gets an equivalent one, doesn't mean you're not going to get it. And moaning about it and worrying about what they think or what they got and you didn't get is literally no good to anybody. So it's time wasted. So recalibrate and use that energy for something more useful. Then it's expectations versus reality. When you look at your ideal process and how things would work, you're thinking of it in a fantasy land relative to a perfectly functioning market where there's a property online or in person. They're asking X, you have X, and you buy it, no questions asked. The reality is completely different. And I think it's a lot easier being the operative word, easier to understand what market you're going into. So once you understand the localized setting you're going to be exploring, you need to take it on its own merits and not the woulda, shoulda, couldas. Because if you're looking in certain countries, someone may say you're looking in an area of France and it's wine country. Maybe the rules are different. Maybe the approach is different. Maybe the timeline is different. And when you're in the Irish property market, it's important to leave aside what you know about where you are. So I often get people who are living abroad and they become disillusioned very quickly, not understanding how Ireland's property market works. No, it's not perfect. No, it's messy. And yes, we don't have the supply. But the reality is, if you're going to buy a property, you either have to adapt to the market, pivot, and work towards what needs to be done, or find someone who does, like a handsome buying agent, or you can moan about it and actually get nothing done. So the expectation of what you expect to see is going to be different from the reality. But in that, you have to put together a strategy that keeps you honest and keeps you aligned with the market you're dealing with, because every market is different, every country is different, every property has its own unique story. And depending on what you're looking for, that can actually work to your advantage. But you have to remember, every single property has its own story. Okay? Now, again, keeping myself super quick and honest, I'm actually being very impressed here. I'm going to go to being the underdog in bidding wars. Now, this is something I see time and again. And for all of our international readers, listeners, LinkedIn lurkers, whatever it may be, this is where you fall down. So you're looking from abroad, you're putting in inquiries with properties, and you may have cash, you may be the absolutely perfect buyer. You could be a great communicator. But in Irish property, an agent has to go off the person that they see in front of them within reason. And they have to profile you and see, are you a good communicator? Are you going to be the person that will actually see this sale through? Because unlike a lot of countries, you don't have a 15-minute closing. You don't have a 24-day closing with no contingencies and escrow. In Ireland, it is a glorified handshake. Do you think you're going to buy it? I think I'm going to buy it. I think I'll sell it to you. And then we both promise not to have a wandering eye in the meantime, which doesn't mean that won't happen. But the reality is, if someone's profiling you from abroad, it's very difficult to put their mark or their finger on what it is you're about and where you're coming from. So international buyers really need to take stock of who they have representing them, how they are represented here, and does that align with their expectations of what they want in their property search. But when it comes to being the underdog, sometimes people go in thinking that they have money, they have cash, they have a certain level of funding in place, and that means they are going to get the property. But to give you a quick overview of how things work in property, if you have cash with nothing to sell, as in your cash, you've got money in the bank, you're top tier. Second to that is mortgage approved with nothing to sell, because then that's more moving parts than cash, but less than the next ones below. Then you have a mortgage with something to sell, i.e. you have to sell to buy. And a lot of people are in that position. And then the bottom of the rung is someone who has to sell, doesn't have a mortgage approval in place, but is waiting for the perfect property to come up. Let me tell you now, that ain't happening, because when you get your property on the market, you're about 6 to 8 weeks behind the curve. So the biggest difficulty for people is feeling like they're the underdog, but they often put themselves in that position because they haven't assessed where they stand. So if you have a strong position such as cash, you want to have a strategy of step in when you're interested, hold firm, or step away. Or you put your best and final offer in on day one, you limit your timeline for the bid to be used, and then you step away accordingly if you find it's gone beyond a level that you want to spend. When it comes to preparing your property for sale, do not wait for the perfect property to come up. Get it prepared, because that's very cumbersome, it's very difficult, and I know it's a real disruption in your day-to-day, because you've got to create this beautiful home for photography and everything else. But for what it's worth, if you get it up, get it ready, and it starts to sell faster than you anticipate, you can always press pause. But if you find your dream home today and you go to an agent and put your property up tomorrow, you're way behind the curve, and it's only going to enter you in a world of hurt. Now, I'm going to stop giving out to you now. That wasn't my intention, but I just thought this is going to give you some ideas of what you can do to deal with the pity party. And before I go into my takeaways for you, I want to acknowledge that I know it's challenging. I know it's difficult. And like a lot of challenges in life, both personal, financial, when it comes to family, anything health related, whatever it may be, there is going to be difficult points in your life. But if you reflect and imagine, what does worry do? Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but you actually go nowhere. So when it comes to the pity party, it's important to acknowledge challenges, acknowledge a setback, take a moment to recalibrate, but then get up, dust yourself off, and go again. I'm going to break my 10-minute rule today, but I'm going to keep it super quick. So what are my takeaways? Refine your brief. So oftentimes I will say to people, your property checklist is your go-to. That is going to be your absolute one sheet on all the things you should and shouldn't be looking for in property. If it falls outside of that, you want to question why you're making the time to do that. Are you deviating from your golden list, or are you being busy for the sake of being busy? Secondly, build your local support team. So A lot of people undervalue what role a buying agent can play, but if you aren't thinking of investing in a professional, make sure you've got family or friends who are aligned with what it is you want to achieve. This could be as simple as telling them what you want from them, not oversending details on properties that you know are going to fatigue them. Tell them what you want in advance. Much like my previous newsletter a couple of weeks ago, do you want me to help or do you want me to listen? But if you don't tell them how they can help, they're going to be running around like headless chickens and they're just going to add to your troubles. Okay? You don't need more people at the pity party. Get comfortable with the pace. So as you're looking for property, everyone has a different timeline and different expectations. But if the market is moving fast, you delaying making a decision or putting in a bid for whatever reason isn't always going to serve you well. I always say to people, if you have your list laid out, you're going to be very clear on what it is you want. If it doesn't fall within your must-haves, let it go. If you're deciding you like something, don't sit on the sidelines and watch it for 2 weeks and watch it go say it agreed. Ring the agent and say, I was really interested. They don't know. They don't have a crystal ball. So when it comes to your pace, if you're interested, step in, and when it reaches either beyond your comfort level or where you don't feel there's value for you in your circumstance, step away and keep looking. If you hold on to these things for dear life, like Jack on the door in Titanic, you're only going to be absolutely knackered by the time you're finished. And a slight aside, there was plenty of room on that door for Jack. I will stick that's something I'm very, very adamant on. Practice emotional detachment. I'm not saying you need to be a cold-hearted deal maker, but I am saying there has to be an element of this is a process. This is a transaction. There is emotion involved, but you have to have tactics and strategies to deal with that. And oftentimes the role of a buying agent is I'm the buffer between you and the market, that I can deliver unfortunate information. I can be the one that maybe relays information in a different way, but I can also give you context. But bear in mind, people don't just pay me to make bids and negotiate. I'm the one that pulls that train up the hill when you lose confidence in yourself, in the market, and the future. And it's important to remember that there is an emotional regulation there that you have to handle. And life is busy. I understand that. But like in everything, sometimes you just have to get on with it and then afterwards reflect on what you did to get there. And finally, not that I want to steal Simon Sinek's job, but visualize your why. So you're looking to buy a property. There is a why involved. Is that going to be you're moving because of your new career? Are you a C-suite executive moving from abroad? Is it family? Is it that you want your children to have education and maybe an Irish accent? Is it that you want to support your family as they age? The short-term pain of these transitional issues, these transactions, these property searches that feel endless will eventually pay off. So once you have your why front and center, even if it's on a post-it on your mirror in the morning, remember, you will get there in the end.